when you mention writer's block to writers, it's like, I was thinking it's like the equivalent of saying Macbeth in a theatre. Everyone, it's like the worst thing that you could say to a writer, are you blocked? But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've actually had a chat with 4 of my good writer friends about their take on it, because I've got 2 books written, and I can't say that there's ever been a time for me where words just wouldn't come. But I think that I've figured out what I think writer's block is, and I do think every writer might define that differently. But if you are doing NaNoWriMo, or even if you aren't, it is not something that you want to get trapped in. And so I'm just going to talk about what I think writer's block might be, and the reasons why it is that you might be sitting either or procrastinating, like checking Twitter, and at the moment it's really actually more difficult to produce things than not produce things, because of COVID and because of all the stress, and everyone's watching the election in the States. There's a lot going on, and I think that it's a very difficult time actually to create anything. So within that climate, I think if you were ever going to be blocked, it's now. And I think writers also notoriously procrastinate. I think every writer I know gets up in the morning and checks email, and then kind of drifts sideways into that and checking Instagram and because you have to do all of that as well. As a successful writer, you have to have a media platform. So there's a lot of babble as well that you can get kind of lost in. But aside from that, I've had a chat with 4 of my great friends in Canada, and they are, I'll tell you who I've chatted to for this. Chevy Stevens, maybe not if you know who I'm talking about. Chevy Stevens is massively famous, I don't know why she's friends with me. Anyway, Chevy, Robin, really good friend of mine, Samantha Lee, and Hannah Mary McKinnon. These are all Canadian best-selling writers. And so I had a chat with all of them, and actually we're all kind of saying the same thing. And we think that actually writer's block, I think it splits into 2 things. For me, it's about really being probably burned out. And I think that that can happen really frequently with writing, because it's so much brain energy goes into it. And you tend to, probably, especially if you're under pressure with a month's deadline, you tend to go really hard at it and overwork your brain, and you're thinking at night and you're writing it in the day, and as soon as you wake up you're thinking about it, and you're hearing the voices of the characters and dialogues, and it's constant. And I do think that you can burn out really fast. And for that reason, I think that quite often when you think you're blocked, it could just be that you need a rest. And I know that NaNoWriMo doesn't really provide a lot of resting time, but I do think sometimes stepping away from it, and I'm going to talk about what I would consider to be cures for writer's block in a minute. But I think stepping away from it is so valuable, and having fresh eyes on your own work is such an important part of the process. The other thing I think people would call writer's block is when you just can't come up with an idea, or you think you can't, and you just spend a long time kind of trapped in that, or you start an idea and you're off to the races and you're writing 2,000 words a day, and then you hit 30,000 and you feel like you've run out completely and the idea is no good, and you feel like you can't generate any more material. And that people are calling writer's block. But I actually think that is to do with not planning or knowing your story very well, or knowing your characters very well. And that's the other side. I said writer's block for me is 2 things. It's either burnout, or it's you need to do more planning. I think that you can really easily get stuck in the middle of a story, especially if you're writing a 70,000 word document. It's very easy to get soft in the middle, and you get there and you don't really know where you're at. You understand the beginning and you know the end, but the middle part is very difficult. And I know a lot of writers say the same thing about that. And I think it's natural as well, and Sam Bailey said this to me, that there are good days and bad days as a writer. You have a focus one day and you might not the next, and you have to listen to that and allow it, I think, as well. You can't be on all the time. But what I really do think, and Chevy said this and I completely agree with her, is that writer's block is not having the answer to a problem, which then kind of spirals into self-doubt, where you can't tell if something is good or not, and it stops you dead in your tracks. And that's really how I would define writer's block. And that I have experienced, because I had a real struggle with Hurry Home, this one that just came out in July, took me 2 years, maybe 2.5 years to write. And I missed deadline after deadline because I just couldn't find the story. I didn't know my story. So that I then lost a lot of self-confidence kind of through that process because I couldn't quite find my way through it. And so in a sense I was blocked, but I didn't really understand that that's what it was. It was more about not having plotted it, because I am a person that's quite kind of slapdash. I tend to just wing it in life. And I did that through Our Little Secret, my first book, and then kind of did it again with Hurry Home and got stuck in it for a long time because I hadn't plotted it at all. So I'm a reformed, I was what they call a pantser, and now I'm a reformed planner. So I now plan really meticulously, and I plan, and I got people's help with, I've just finished my third book and it came out in 5 months. And that's because I planned it. And there was never a moment of ever feeling blocked or lost, really, not lost in it. And I never felt underconfident. And it just was one of those beautiful experiences where you feel like you're on a, you know, like a galloping horse, and it's just got a really nice rhythm and you're just on it and you're going. That's what third book was like for me. But the second book couldn't have been less like that. So I'm going to talk about how I think you should maybe solve your writer's block, if we're calling it that. But I think there's a quote that Chevy gave me, and I'm going to read it to you, but I need glasses, 1 second. Writer's block, says Orson Scott Card. Don't know really who that is, but Orson Scott Card nails it for me. He says, writer's block is my unconscious mind telling me that something I've just written is either unbelievable or unimportant to me. And I solve it by going back and reinventing some part of what I've already written, so that when I write it again, it is believable and interesting to me. Then I can go on. Writer's block is never solved by forcing oneself to write through it, because you haven't solved the problem that caused your unconscious mind to rebel against the story. So it won't work for you or for the reader. I think that's a really good quote. And that is honestly how I'd sum it up. I think if you're blocked and can't write, it's a symptom of something else. So, like I said at the start, it's either, in my opinion, that you need to take a rest, or you need to plot it and go back. So here are tips, because what time is it already? Time's flying. So the tips, if you feel that you are blocked because you are doubting the story, or you've run out of where it goes, or you're a bit lost and you're kind of moving characters around, but you don't really know why, and it just doesn't feel real to you, or it's lost its spark, my advice to you, and that's again not super NaNoWriMo friendly, is to go back and plot it. Take a day or two and plot it really carefully. And what I do now is I get color-coded Post-it notes. I love these. And I find that I take my main characters, usually 4, probably main characters around there, and I give them their own color. And then what I do is I figure out, like I planned a big overarch, so I know what happens to this green character, and I'll put it on the wall over on that. Well, I've got a big wall over there. I put it on the wall, like, where does this character begin? And I'll put it almost beat by beat through the story. So what I mean by beats is key moments through the story for that character, through the trajectory of a plot arc. And I understand that now. I understand stages of story because I've learned that. And they're formulaic. The books I write are very formulaic, psychological thrillers. So I know exactly what happens to the green character at different stages of the story all the way through. And I've done it into beats of that story. And then I take the next one and I do the same with all 4 characters. And then I can line them up even. And I can say, oh, at this stage of the story, green's doing this and orange is doing that and pink's doing that. And then the chapters start to emerge for me. And I can almost pinpoint where I am and what's happening. And you might not even see all these characters on the page, but you know where they're at in the story. And that has helped me so much. I literally went from 2 years writing a story to 5 months writing a story. And so if anything, I'd really recommend that. Plotting it or outlining it. And if you feel like you don't know your characters, you won't know your plot. So you perhaps need to write their backstory or interview them. I do all of that now. I think you need to go back, if you're stuck, go back to a scene that is working, where you do know where you are, and write that one, and try to don't like get stuck in the chronology of it. I jump back and forwards in the story, and if I'm feeling underconfident, I'll jump to a part of the story where I do know what's happening, and I'll write that. And because for me, I think being blocked is about confidence. So yeah, skip ahead or go back, and that's fine. And also, I think that in terms of if you're feeling burned out, you do really need to step away. And everybody I know says take a shower. That's funny. But all writers think, and honestly, it happens again and again. I honestly think and it's not just me, but showers are magic. You go in not knowing how to resolve the scene, and the water hits your head. It's like a massage. And then the amount of times I've run out of the shower, still in a towel, like pushed past everyone and written something down, scribbled it on it, because I've got it, and I got it in the shower. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. It's something to do with showers that really unlocks things. I also find mindless things where your mind can rest a bit, like I think of lots of ideas when I'm walking the dog. I think of lots of ideas when I'm driving, as long as I'm on my own and people aren't talking to me. And I talk to myself quite a lot, which is perhaps a little bit mad, but I do try and talk out loud. Plot points that are tricky, I'll be like, and I'll try and think, what would this character do? Because character is plot. So what would they do in this situation? And then I'll follow that. And if it's feeling uncomfortable, just like that quote I read you, or it doesn't feel real, you know you're going in the wrong direction, and you have to kind of trust that a bit. And I do think fresh eyes are everything, like even a little bit of a rest, a day off, a night off. I've gone to sleep at night, not knowing, like blocked in a paragraph, cannot finish it. And in the morning I wake up and it's there. It's almost as if, I actually think this, it's almost as if the writing that you do is this kind of organic thing that grows overnight when you're not watching it. It's like everyone in Nelson is really into sourdough starters. Does anyone notice that? Obsessively into sourdough. I've been offered about 10 of them, don't want them. But I do think books are a bit like that. They kind of, although trickier, they kind of grow on their own and do their own thing. And you come back and you're like, oh, look, something happened while I wasn't here. And that's kind of a magic thing about it, I think. It's your brain at rest will create all kinds of things that you hadn't expected. And if you can allow yourself that rest, I feel like you'll sidestep whatever this block thing is. So those are my two main things. You either need a rest or there's a problem in the plot. And that's, I think, what would cause most of people's anxiety or not being able to produce, not being able to go on, I think that's the block, I think.